Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sebastian Prost. I'm a PhD student at Open Lab, Newcastle University in the UK. And the work I'm presenting today is co-authored with Clara, Crivellaro, Haddon, and Rob Comber. And with this work, we want to introduce the concept of food democracy to HCI. Food democracy draws our attention to ethical food practices and active participation of citizens in shaping our food system. And we want to argue that this can be useful as a frame for designers to question the current neoliberal market model and think about new technologies to support radical alternatives. And we do this because we believe that today's global food system shows how unsustainable it is on many levels. Neoliberalism and the politics of deregulation have led to a resource-intense industrial agriculture with a lot of environmental problems. Also, the limited regulation led to a market concentration of a few global players that dominate the market and exploit people in the global south and in the global north alike. And also the proliferation of highly processed food led to a lot of health problems all over the world. And in this context, HCI research has explored how digital technology can shape how we interact with food. And HCI has taken a particular interest for healthy eating and well-being and for environmental sustainability of the production, consumption and disposal of food. This includes both corrective technologies that aim at behavior change, for example through persuasive design, but also celebratory technologies that aim at supporting positive food practices. And this research really wants to contribute to HCI's ambition to change the way we interact with food, and it tries to do that in two ways. First, we want to introduce the concept of food democracy as a lens to think about design for human food interaction. And second, we want to provide empirical insights from applying this framing to a technology to support a local food initiative in the northeast of England. So what is food democracy? We borrow this term from food policy research. Food democracy helps seeing that the food problem is not just one of health or the environment, but it's a democratic one. And it sees the production and consumption of food as democratic practices of food citizens who are not just producers or consumers in their confined market roles, but they are actively engaged in a change of power from market to the increased role of civil society. And in particular, food democracy aims at structural change towards ethical food practices. And this includes environmental sustainability, economic justice, social justice, and a democratic governance of the food system. And food democracy needs to be understood as a process and as a transformation. And it therefore recognizes that not everyone can participate in it today. For example, local and organic food tends to cost more and exclude some people. But this should not be used as a reason to argue against it, but as a goal to work towards, acknowledging that it needs like a long-term transformation. So food democracy really brings these issues of food justice and fairness to the foreground, connecting the environment, people, and the economy, and sees food citizens as central in governing the food system. And we use this concept as a frame to understand the role of technology in this study about an initiative to set up a local food network in the northeast of England. And the initiative's aim was to connect, or the initiative's aim is to connect local communities with local producers. And we looked at the potential role of an online platform to enable this. This platform is called the Open Food Network. And this context can help us understanding how technology can or cannot support food democracy. And given food democracy's emphasis on social justice, the northeast of England is particularly interesting because it is generally more deprived than the rest of the country. So the Open Food Network is an open source platform for hosting online shops for local food. And it allows producers, also called hubs, to set up a shop and sell direct to consumers. And as you can see on this map, there's already quite a few hubs and producers active on the platform, but there's a distinct lack in the northeast of England. And food hubs then are kind of lightweight ways of, or intermediaries and light ways of organizing demand and distribution of local food. Hubs can have an online shop front like this one, through which several producers can sell direct to consumers. but hubs are also a physical space for the delivery and pickup of food. And by streamlining the logistics and cutting out the intermediaries, the Open Food Network promises to keep the prices low and could therefore provide healthy and sustainably produced food that is also affordable for a deprived community. So we started our engagement with local actors in the region following an action research approach. And we did that in 2 cycles. In the first cycle, we engaged with various food-related organizations, such as local producers, local councils, food charities, and community centers. And community centers played a key role as they would act as hubs in the food network. And we've discussed with these organizations the practicalities of such a network, but our engagements quickly revealed the underlying challenges for setting up a local food network. And using thematic analysis of our field notes, we uncovered a number of issues we then unpicked further in the second cycle. And in this, we conducted 5 interviews with key actors from the previous engagements. And based on the data from both cycles, I would now like to walk you through the 3 themes that map out the challenges and opportunities for setting up a local food network with deprived communities. The first theme is about local food values. For our partners, local food stands for connecting people, positive environmental impact, supporting local economy, high quality, healthy, and often organic food. But local food also means higher prices. And therefore many organizations compromise on these values in one way or the other. Food charities might compromise on the production standards. Hubs at the Open Food Network generally compromise on the affordability, as this quote shows. At the moment, it is a case of in order to run a commercial food hub, it is necessary to appeal to the environmental motivations of higher income shoppers to make the food hub viable. So even big hubs like this one on the Open Food Network need to acknowledge that they are excluding lower income groups to be commercially successful. And to overcome this, the second theme discusses ways organizations see to improve affordability of food. However, these ways generally stay within the neoliberal system the organizations are operating in. So they are either cost-cutting measures, so further compromises that mean someone else in the food chain will lose out. For example, using lower production standards or relying on volunteers. And the second way is to generate money, so charging sales margins or membership fees to cover the operation. Another, maybe unsurprisingly common option is to seek grant funding. So we've been quite successful in attracting grant money up to now, but that won't go on forever. We're looking for routes where we can generate money. So grants, especially in the UK, are seen as increasingly unreliable, and charities are moving towards commercial activities to generate additional income. And perhaps as a response to the seemingly inescapable neoliberalism, organizations point towards co-development and community participation as ways to establish a local food network. And in this co-development through collaboration of many local actors and co-ownership are seen as important to overcome the commonly fragmented approaches by charities and public interventions. So you have people who are passionate and they're often very engaging with the local community, but they don't have any vision of scale. And scaling these initial initiatives up would help to have a more long-term and structural impact. And community participation is the second part of that, as it empowers people to take ownership over the local food system and also deliver the benefits that actually correspond to community needs. So taking these 3 themes, I would like to talk about what these findings can mean for the design of technology for human food interaction, supporting food democracy initiatives. And I will talk about what we consider the most important points. There is more in the paper. So given the immense scale of the problem, what can we do? So first, I think we need to acknowledge that we often design within the current economic system. And this can mean that design such as the Open Food Network replicates neoliberal market mechanisms, and it does that by focusing on aggregation and coordination of demand. A food democracy lens, however, also highlights that staying within the neoliberal logic reproduces its inequalities as well. And in our findings, this has been shown that the local food remains unaffordable. So taking a political stance, designers can work within the system and at the same time subvert its logic. And the Open Food Network does that to the extent that it sidelines powerful market actors indirectly connecting producers and consumers. There is, however, more space for design, in particular for scaling up and scaling out, so that replication of food hubs. And this could, for example, mean tools for reaching wider audiences through marketing, organizing of delivery logistics, or sharing resources and infrastructure across the network. All with the goal to use an economy of scale to make local food more affordable. And this effectively creates a competitive alternative to markets, but with multiple non-hierarchical actors and democratic governance. So in opposition to one global food system, we're talking about many local food systems. Food democracy also helps us to think about questioning the neoliberal market model altogether and think about radical alternatives combining environmental sustainability, economic justice, social justice, and democratic governance. And food democracy makes clear that this is a long-term transformation, so designers of human food interactions need to start thinking in decades, not just months or years. And our findings point towards large-scale collaboration and community participation as ways to overcome the neoliberal market. Looking at SCI, there's a lot of research out there on environmental sustainability of food, and there's an increasing interest around economic justice, for example, through solidarity economy and platform cooperativism. And recent SCI on social justice design. So food democracy is really about joining up these strands for human food interaction design. One example for design towards food democracy could therefore aim at tools to enable active participation through commissioning of food production. Food citizens would engage in collective decision-making on the criteria of food production and distribution, and commission producers that fulfill these requirements. So, and given, as a third point, given the complexities of change that require the collaboration of many actors, as a first step, it can be useful to learn from the success stories elsewhere. And one area we can look at are consumer cooperatives. There's internationally established organizations such as the SIGCHI Club in Japan, which has 250,000 members, or the GAS in Italy, which has 3,000 members, and these organizations have successfully organized collective purchasing of ethical food for many decades. And their practices realize elements of food democracy. For example, the collective decision-making or the direct relations between producers and consumers. Or we can look at Greece, where today 80% of the population are served through informal distribution of food, through the solidarity economy, selling food well below retail prices directly from producers. And to learn from these forms of self-organization and self-management are opportunities for ACI to design. And technology platforms could help telling and sharing these success stories from across the world as a resource for new local initiatives. So concluding, food democracy is a process towards ethical food practices that are socially, economically, and environmentally fair. Food democracy also fosters active participation of citizens in shaping our food system. And food democracy can be useful as a lens for ACI to engage in the study and design of technology that moves beyond the transactional interactions between consumers and producers to relations between food citizens. And while changing the food system seems like an impossible challenge, food democracy can offer useful guidance for the kind of problems designers should engage with. And with this, I would like to thank our community partners, Matter Well Connected, Artisan Baking Community, and Northeast Organic Growers for the continuous collaboration and support in realizing this research. I would like you to thank you for listening and take questions.
Any questions for the speaker?
Thank you so much for such a great talk. I'm Dana Habib from Indiana University, and And I'm curious to see how the Open Food Network platform interacted with non-technological situations that already help farmers actually sell their produce, such as farmers markets, or in the United States we have CSAs, Community Supported Agriculture. Did you look at how the technology helped to support those as well, those structures that are already in place, in order to either get new customers or sell produce through those mechanisms?
Yeah. So the Open Food Network in the UK actually started as an attempt to basically create a community-supported agriculture, but at a much larger scale, because you can join up different producers and basically have such a thing with a much wider reach. So it basically, they're in their attempt, they are trying to complement these other initiatives. They're also starting to partner up with farmers markets to have basically a click and collect service where you can order online and then it gets delivered to the farmers market and you have a dedicated stall to pick it up from there. But the potential of the Open Food Network is really to also make the logistics or the effort for the producers much simpler, because they don't have to be present for a whole day at the market. It's time they can actually do the thing they want to do, like producing food, or they don't have to hire anyone. So there, for them, this is a very lightweight and not cost-intensive way.
No, that makes perfect sense. When I've worked with farmers in the past, that was a big argument, was they are being spread so thin across multiple farmers markets. So I see how that could be a huge help. Thank you.
That's a very, very interesting talk, Morten Køck, Aarhus University. Is there the network you're talking about with hubs and so on and so forth, what kind of organization are controlling that network or access to it, and is it supported by software?
That's a very good question, and something we are looking into at the moment. So the Open Food Network does not really cover anything beyond the order system. So it does not really deal with the organizational structure or governance that sits behind a food hub. It's something that's completely separate, and that's a bit of a problem, because you can go any direction. Which could be a strength, or it's seen as a strength, because you can organize a hub any way you want. The most hubs, as far as I know from talking to people from the Open Food Network, is that they are set up as a kind of cooperative. But then in which way this is organized is completely separate. And they might not use any technology at all, or different tools.
But if somebody wants to set up a new hub, what is the first step?
You create a profile on the platform,
okay,
which is done in 10 minutes. But you need the organization behind you, and you need to network already. That's the other challenge is, or what we spend like months, is basically finding the actors that want to work together on such a network. That's also sort of completely outside of the platform.
And who's taking care of the software?
For the Open Food Network itself, that's a community interest company, so it's sort of in the UK construct, it's sort of some half charity, half company. It's an open source community that is driving it.